Hello and welcome back to Pixel Street Videos. Me and Will have been reviewing every episode of the Halo show so far, and we figured why end here? So here we are. We are going to talk about episode 4 of the Halo TV series on Paramount Plus. I almost said Showtime, but nope, Showtime dropped this show.
Yes, they
uh,
did.
it is now on Paramount Plus. So the title of this episode was Homecoming, and what we've been doing is kind of like we've been spoiling previous episodes if we want to at the beginning here, but we will not spoil episode 4 if you have not watched it yet. Highly recommend doing it. So the title of the episode's Homecoming, and if you've been watching the show, you know that that's because Master Chief is going to his home,
hmm
like where he is from. So that's kind of where we start out. Will, overall thoughts on this episode?
Last one of these reviews, I said if we were gonna get another filler episode without any substantial action, not to spoil anything, I would start to lose interest, and I feel like I'm there. There were some good parts to the episode, but this one to me was not as entertaining, personally.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. There is some action in this one. We
Just a
won't
little
spoil
bit.
any of that, but um, and even the little action that there is, it's more than the previous two episodes.
This is true. It's just not the action we want as Halo fans.
Exactly, exactly. But yeah, overall, I kind of am just gonna reiterate some of the same stuff. Like, it is more world building, and I don't
hmm
know how much more of this they can do to keep my attention.
Yeah,
Granted, like they are portraying the chief and like Halsey's relationship very, very differently than
they
what
are.
is in the games. So at least from like I haven't read any of the books or anything, so I don't know how deep that goes. Um, but it does seem like they're doing very different stuff with that and like the origins of the chief in a way.
hmm
Um, so yeah, it's getting interesting on that front. But like I said, I don't know how much longer they can hold my attention. Like, granted, I'm gonna watch every fucking episode because I'm a
Oh
huge
yeah.
Halo fan. But it's just like, at what point is it just gonna get boring? Like, it's like, oh, gotta watch Halo today.
Right.
So yeah, overall, it's just more world building, right? So
hmm
it's kind of losing us both. But we are gonna now go into full on spoilers. If you've not watched the episode, highly recommend doing so before listening. Um, All right. Wee wee wee. Spoilers, Will. The spoiler
We need to get a
preacher here.
graphic popping up, a really low budget one.
Um, so, Will, it's your turn to go through the synopsis of the episode. So,
Okay.
walk us through it and we will discuss as we go.
So, brief recap of the last episode. Just TLDR, Cortana's here. Chief doesn't like her. And he takes out that little emotion chip, touches the artifact, gets more memories flooding back, and wants to go back to his home planet of Aridness 2. And that's kind of where the last episode
Well, the
left us off.
reason he wants to go back is because he sees visions of him as a child drawing another artifact.
Yeah.
So he has reason to believe that there's another artifact on that planet.
Yeah. So nothing but just suspicion in his own mind and a core belief that like this is where he needs to go. And that's really where this one picks up. It immediately goes into him going back to the Aridness 2, landing there, and just memories start flushing back to him. Now, the episodes, and I know in our recaps that we kind of jump around on the synopsis, and it's because the show also kind of just jumps around between different subplots going on. In this episode, we have three different plots. We've got Chief on Aridness 2 with Halsey and Halsey's assistant, which I honestly never committed that guy's name to memory.
I don't
We've
know. I don't know what purpose is that guy serving other than being the
I
creepy guy in the last episode.
right, he's literally the third wheel, and nobody wants him around. um, Second subplot is Silver Team, which this is the subplot I actually liked about this episode. Silver Team with Miranda Keys and studying the artifact, and we get to see the Spartans interacting with not only their own team, but with somebody else that's not a part of their clique. And we'll go into that one here in a minute. And then the third subplot, which is by far my least favorite, is Quan's back on Madrigal. She's doing stuff. It's honestly that's the part of the show that is very much losing me. Because you can tell that they decided to put too much effort in to a character that they decided to create, and realized, I think, halfway through, like, holy crap, this story's going literally nowhere. But long story short, we're back on Eridanus 2 with Chief. We'll start with that one. He's just walking around his home area, like his, I guess, backyard, or what it used to be his backyard when he was a kid. Memories are flooding in, and he starts digging, just like on a hunch, like it's here. We need to dig here. And he pulls up a case with a bunch of his drawings as a kid. Like, his family made him bury these drawings. They were all very similar drawings of both artifacts together, and then a lot of them with mysterious circles, sacred rings, if you will.
The Sonic rings.
The Sonic rings, exactly. And a lot, it's really just there's not a whole lot that goes on in these scenes other than he's just remembering his childhood, and Halsey is just looking very uncomfortable about him remembering
The whole episode.
Yeah, because we know, as Halo fans who've played the games, who've at least dove into some of the lore a little bit beyond the games with some of the other motion pictures and animated series and things like that, the Spartans were kidnapped as children, and she doesn't want John to know that she took him away from his family. And as he remembers more, the closer he gets to that realization. So she's terrified. She's afraid that Chief is going to literally rip her apart because, well, he can, quite frankly. So he digs up that case. Memories are flowing in. He goes up to the house on the hill where he lived with his mom and dad, and asks Cortana to see if she can create a digital representation of his home to help him remember a little bit better. And he starts walking around. Nice music is playing. He's having wonderful memories of his family. And then it starts hitting him, the memories of him and the other artifact. He starts remembering what happened, what led to those events, that he touched the Forerunner artifact and started drawing all these crazy pictures. And in doing so, he has a memory of a young Dr. Halsey doing, and this is something I actually really liked, because this was not only from the books, but from the Fall of Reach animated series as well. She was testing him by flipping a coin, and he was getting it right every time. Now, in the books and in the show, or at least the animated show, Chief was able to guess it properly every time because he was able to actually analyze the patterns in his head and guess it as it hit down. And it was just a little UNSC coin. So I thought that was a neat little touch that they actually did add in that was actually lore accurate. And he just gets pissed off seeing her in his memories at that house before he was orphaned. So I think he's starting to connect those dots there.
The thing I love is after every time she can tell that the Master Chief is like snapping out of his vision, right? Because she could tell when he's like being coherent of like her and stuff. She's like, okay, we got the drawings. Why don't we go back to the ship and check out these drawings now? Like,
it's
every
not
time she
subtle
gets,
at all.
yeah, every second she gets.
Oh man, it's interesting, the writing choices, or at least maybe even the acting choices of some of these actors. But basically, he starts remembering where the artifact is. They hop in the warthog. He hops down the hole, and they both walk up to the Forerunner artifact. Yeah, he just literally just jumps right in.
Yeah, it's probably like a 20-foot drop, and he just like shoom,
no big deal. And that's where his arc for the episode ended. It was him remembering the artifact, and he was going up to touch it. And I'm sure that's exactly where the next episode is going to pick up on. So that's his arc. The arc of the we'll do the worst one next. Kwan's arc. They Kwan and Soren finally arrive back on Madrigal after coaxing Soren that if you bring me here and get me to the Resistance, we'll give you a lot of money. After literally showing him no proof that she has the
Yeah.
money to give
Yeah.
him.
Exactly.
Um, to basically, she wants to help the rest of her family and fight off. I'm spacing on the bad guy's name. The guy that was from Pacific Rim. He was one of the scientists in Pacific Rim.
Yeah,
He
I don't
plays
know who he is.
the generic bad guy trying to take over the government of that planet, and she's a part of the resistance. Like, they're creating a bad Star Wars movie here. And she gets there, they're running through the bazaar, and there's a couple little Easter eggs thrown just kind of in the background, like kids trying to like pawn off UNSC gear and helmets and armor and shit like that. And she finds out that her father's funeral memorial service or something was going to be going on, and she needed to meet up with her aunt, who is, according to her, still in control of most of the family's money. Basically, she's saying whatever she needs to say to keep Soren around so she has protection. And Soren, you can just tell he's just annoyed by this woman's presence 100% of the
Yeah.
time.
The only reason he's with her still is because John asked him to take care of her.
Exactly. So they try to develop this story of this insurrectionist group trying to take over Madrigal, and Kwan wanting to restart the resistance, even though all the money is supposedly now gone, according to her aunt. And then, bam, out of nowhere comes an assassin. She just completely slits Kwan's aunt's throat, and Soren busts in, shoots her in the throat, or shoots her in the shoulder.
Yeah.
She jumps out of the window and does some
She ping
sick,
pongs
she ping
against
pong
walls.
parkoured off the walls and runs away. And that was I mean, that's really all that happens with that arc. And I feel like that was a good like 1/3 of the episode. And I feel like nothing actually happened there aside from, hey, we saw the bad guy of the show. And
I mean, you have to imagine that, like, towards the end of the season, right? We're gonna see Kwan, Soren, and the Chief and Silver Team all together at one point, right? Like doing something. So yeah, I really hope that story arc pays off. It's kind of unnecessary feeling right now, other than the fact that, like, hey, we introduced this character in episode 1. We should keep doing this.
right.
It's just weird.
But the way that they played out the first episode and finding the artifact tells me, like, or at least with Forerunner tech kind of thrown throughout the entire galaxy on every planet, the only value that planet has was that artifact as far as a storytelling standpoint. Everything that's going on with that subplot to me is just useless. I feel like it is not advancing what is going on with the Chief and the Spartans and the other artifact that they've moved on from Madrigal. We're on Eridanus 2 now. Why do we keep going back to this planet that served one point? And it already served that point in episode 1.
It doesn't make sense. Like, we already know who the main bad guy is in this show, right? And it's not the fucking dude from Pacific Rim.
No, not at all. It's the Covenant, right? You know, the things we've only seen like a very brief bit of.
Exactly. It's strange. Unless Kwan is somehow gonna be the bridge of having the Pacific Rim guy get on the UNSC's side or something and let them fight together. But even still, that's still weird. Like,
yeah.
It's just weird,
especially since the Covenant have invaded that planet. The whole arc, at least from like the extended lore and the books, is that the war that the Covenant started is what united humanity. The insurrection was over. We were all fighting the same war. So what the hell? Like,
Yeah, it's also weird because like in all the Halo games, there's never a third party like human army of any sort. And now the
Hmm.
specific room dude, like they're not even I wouldn't even consider them an army. This is just like a
They're just a
fucking
biker gang.
mafia. It's
Yeah,
a
they're all wearing
mafia on
black leather
Madrigal.
and
Yeah, it's like it's so weird. Like why what's
yeah.
the point of them? Um yeah,
So
I
that's
don't know.
yeah, that's I wish I could say more about it, but it wasn't interesting. That particular
Yeah.
arc of this episode. And the final arc, which I find probably honestly the most interesting part of it of this particular episode, was Silver Team. It starts off with Kai removing her little emotion chip after she figured out John removed his. And you can tell in the earlier parts of her on screen, like she's going through the same like emotional like overload the Chief went through in the previous episode. And I kind of honestly liked seeing that. It was almost like a kid learning what life is for the first time. She straight up just like decides, you know what, I'm gonna dye a couple strands of my hair
Yeah.
just to
Well,
add
no, no,
some
hold on.
personality.
Hold on, like I had huge issue. First of all, when she was naked removing that chip, Elise happened to be
Mhm.
walking by. She's like, "So this is why you like Halo?" Like, no, not at all. And then I was like, "Yeah, because I like seeing Master Chief's ass." She's like,
Mhm.
"Wait, Master Chief's a woman? How progressive." But yeah. Anyway,
Oh man.
another issue I have is like she was like after she removed that chip, she was like greasing her sniper, right? Like greasing the
Hmm.
gun, cleaning it, and she just like looks at the red like oil, the
Hmm.
grease, and she's
And she
like,
was like,
"Huh." And then she starts putting it in her hair. It's like, yo, that is destroying your hair, woman.
right. But it was an interesting take because I mean I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring some personality to the characters, which in a live action anything, you got to have at least some semblance of personality there. It literally can't just be just robotic. Now, with that being said, I think a back and forth between personality and no personality creates for a good comic relief, and I think we had that a little bit when Kai was explaining to Miranda in the scene where they were all touching the artifact to see if it would react to them. They were bouncing ideas back and forth about the Covenant language and what they had experienced on the field with Miranda, who has not been out on the field. But that back and forth between Kai, who's starting to have these emotional, not outbursts, but just like she's overfilled with feeling now, just like how the Chief was in the last episode, bouncing those thoughts back off of Riz and Vanek was I thought really nice because she was telling the story about how they were all given pets and that if they lost their objective during their training, they had to eliminate their pets, which I think that actually was from the book as well. But Vanek, straight up, Vanek acts more like the Chief from the games than Chief in this show does. It
Yeah,
is
for
so
sure.
funny, just straight faced. Yep. Mm-hmm. Just man a few words. But I thought it was interesting to see the back and forth between Miranda Keyes, the scientist, and Kai, the Spartan, kind of collaborating to try to figure out what the Covenant were really after in regards to the artifact. And then
I have
they
a
just,
question. I have a question
yeah,
for you. You think they're gonna fuck?
they looked like they were going to.
It seemed like they were about to kiss. It seemed like they
It's
were
like
about to
we're
kiss in this
basically
episode.
sisters, and then leaned in
Yeah,
really close and then backed away.
yeah, it was really fucking strange. But
There
yeah,
was definitely some sexual tension there.
there for sure was. Another issue I have is that like Miranda's whole objective up until this point, right? All we know that she's
Hmm.
been working on is like trying to decipher the Sangheili language, right? The Covenant language
Hmm.
that they speak. Is it Sangheili?
Yep.
Yeah. Um, like her whole objective is to dissect that language so that they can learn what they're saying, whether it be through like Spartan like head cam like recordings or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And not one time did they think to ask the fucking people that like
We're
encounter all of these
fighting
Covenant all
them,
the time.
right? Like you're supposed to be a scientist from the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
What the hell?
That should have been step one. It's like, all right, what have you heard them
Oh my god.
saying, and like, can you like associate these with anything?
Right.
But
But
no,
I thought it was a
it
neat
was
little thing.
cool. it was cool seeing Kai pick up the needler. Like in that moment right there, you could tell like she does have a personality now that she removed that chip, right?
Yeah,
Because
she was
like
getting
none of
excited,
the
like, "Oh my god,
yeah
this is where the needles go, and it super
yeah
combines. It you don't even have to worry about aiming; it just finds living tissue." I'm like, "Oh my god,
yeah.
she's having way too much fun with this."
And the
But
other two Spartans are just like standing there, like, yep.
yep, that's right.
Look up, all right. Look down, okay.
Yep. There was actually a lot of cool props in that scene. Like there were some carbines in the background. There at one point they were holding a gigantic plasma grenade, like this freaking big. Um, it was in very briefly on screen. They were just kind of holding it like this, like it was a giant
I didn't
orb.
even catch that.
hmm Um, but they did one thing in that scene that I was a little questioning. They literally just name dropped Halo before even finding out what it is. Because they were deciphering some of the audio recordings from that fight on Madrigal, and when we're assuming the Arbiter saw Chief touch the Keystone artifact, that hologram stuff came up, and he said something and then ran away. They deciphered it as Sacred Ring and paused on the image of Chief's head cam, and then Kai just leans in and says, "Halo." I'm like, why?
I
You
mean,
don't even fucking know.
I mean, Halo technically means sacred ring, right?
Yeah, true.
So, like by
But
definition, that's just what she called it. But also,
yeah,
like the chief doesn't know what it's called either, and they refer to it
yeah,
as Halo.
yeah.
So maybe they are already aware of a ring called Halo, and that's all they know. Like they
True.
don't know
Yeah.
what it
For
does
they
because
don't know what it
even
is, how
Halsey,
big it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
because even Halsey asked the chief like, "What does it do?" Because like
hmm
she sees the rings drawn on all these sketches from when the chief was a kid, and she
hmm
asks like, "Where is it and what does it do?" And he's like, "I don't fucking know, man. You fucking kidnapped
Right.
me."
You wiped my mind at least 7 times. I don't know what you want from me.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's the at least the highlights that stuck in my memory about this episode. Um, one third of it was interesting to me.
yeah, yeah.
That
I
was
kind of
really
agree with
about
that.
it.
It. I really hope the chief starts doing something other than like remembering and going
Yeah,
places that he remembers. While like I think it's beneficial for it in terms of world building, I don't think it needed to have been 3 of these first 4 episodes.
right. Like if this were a design choice of him wanting to have memories, the way I would film it is he would still be engaging in combat. But then, like how in Halo 3, how Cortana's little vision things would pop up and you'd like stumble and you'd move really slowly in the game. Like, why not have that as the storytelling mechanic of him remembering? Like, mid combat, seeing something, remembering, and he's just stumbling and Cortana's just yelling in his ear. Like, I feel like that could have been a better way and a more at least a better way to give an homage to some of the games themselves, because that literally was a storytelling device in Halo 3. So I don't know.
In
It's yeah.
I was gonna say in terms of the show as a whole, you can really see how much they're trying to humanize the chief,
Oh
and
yeah.
now we know these Spartans in general, right?
hmm
Because like the chief from the games, most of this stuff would never have happened, right?
Yeah.
They would even if he did find out this was his home planet, they would have went there, they would have got the drawings, looked at them, and then probably left right away, right? They
hmm
wouldn't have like maybe they would have looked around more and then ended up finding that thing, but like the old chief would not have cared that like that was his childhood home, like
No,
at least
it
the
would
video
not have.
game chief. It wouldn't have been a big deal for most of this stuff, so that's
Yeah.
interesting. Another thing I'm excited about is at the end of the episode, Miranda Keys is giving a monologue about how Halsey, like one of her biggest fears is being out of control,
Yes.
and the fact that Miranda Keys can tell that Kai is like slightly losing it because she like
hmm
mentions like, oh, there's probably a glitch, and like Halsey doesn't like glitches, and then she
Yeah.
mentions that she doesn't like being in control, and you can see that she doesn't like being in control because she's nervous this whole episode because the chief is on his home planet remembering all these
hmm
things, and then I forget what the last few words that Miranda Keys says are, but it like sent a chill down my spine.
Mhm.
It's like when she's out of control, like there's
And
nothing
she
she won't
doesn't
do or
tolerate
something.
glitches or something along those
Yeah,
lines.
yeah,
Then
she doesn't
you
tolerate
see the
glitches.
when Chief looks away during that voiceover, her smile just fades, and you just see this anger
Yeah,
going over her face. And I know exactly the part you're talking about.
yeah,
Um,
and so you could tell next episode she's gonna fucking have Cortana probably try and break the chief down, like was
mm,
planned, right? Because
yeah,
Cortana has control of his like brain and everything. I assume.
more or less, yeah. I mean, we saw
Um,
in that the previous episode that she straight up comatose him to take control of his body.
yeah.
Like,
I mean,
there's some crazy shit that could happen.
whether that is her like taking over his body or just locking his armor, right? Like she probably has
True.
both
Yeah.
capabilities. So yeah, Halsey is definitely going to become, I think, in the next few episodes, like a minor bad guy,
Hmm.
where she starts controlling the chief, and the chief realizes, and then somehow the chief, breaks Cortana off of her network in some way and leaves with Silver
Hmm.
Team.
I
But yeah,
I'm gonna make a prediction by the end of the series, at least this season, Halsey is going to be in prison,
I
and we're going
agree.
to get something very similar to the opening of Halo 4, where she's being interrogated for the questionable choices she made on making the Spartans. I have
Insanely
a
questionable. It's
yeah.
not questionable at all. There's no question about it. She's stealing these kids.
Yeah. So I have a prediction that that is going to happen, but at the pace that this show is going, and considering we only have five five more episodes left
Five
in the
more.
season, I don't think that they're going to be able to cram in the invasion of Reach and finding Halo in that way. I feel like they're going to go in a different route and find Halo completely different on how they came across it in the games.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's no way they end this season without finding Halo in one
Yeah.
way or another. I mean, this is kind of just leading us into what we think is going to happen at the end of the season, which is
Yeah.
what we've been doing every week at the end of each review here. So yeah, there's no way that they end this season without the chief flying on a ship towards Halo at the very least.
Yeah.
Um, and I could see next season being they find Halo and the Covenant also invade Reach to try and like distract us, right?
Mhm.
From like whether it's like harvesting Halo or you know what I mean, like getting to the control of it or
Yeah.
preventing the Covenant from getting there. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. The thing is like that second season is from what I'm describing sounding like it's gonna be so cool, but
Mhm.
it's gonna be so far away from now. It's gonna be like 5 years probably. I don't know, 3 years maybe.
It's it's hard to say because I mean, the show just went through development hell because they announced it the year they announced the Xbox One, which was 2013.
Yeah.
E3 of 2013 was when they said, "Hey, we're making the Halo TV show," and here it is, 2022,
To be fair
and
though, like it makes you wonder how long did it take them to actually film and come out with the show, right? Probably 2 years.
it
So
with COVID, I'd say 2 years if I had to guess. But
so
it
I
was
mean,
just getting to that point with pre-production and writing and finding the correct people. It took them forever. So I guess if they can somehow get everybody that worked on it to come back and just go ahead and start spearheading a season 2 script or even just a screenplay, then yeah, I we may actually get one next year. Maybe. It would be lucky, but maybe.
yeah, but like the thing is like that also that season 2 if that's how it plays out, it sounds so cool. What is the rest of season 1 going to be? Is it going to be
Yeah.
boring episodes like this where there's like slight minor action and then the rest is the chief like looking around confused at everything?
Well, at least from the trailers that we got for season 1, we know there's a lot more action that is still yet to come. There's the little shot they had of Chief jumping out of the Pelican and just doing a stratosphere jump with obviously like no parachute. I'm sure he's going to use like the thruster packs on his armor to slow him down or something. So we know some cool stuff is going to be happening. I think we're just getting a little sore of the world building at this point. So,
We also did not see what's that Covenant lady's name?
it's either Mackie or Maki. I
Yeah.
I don't know
We
the pronunciation because they haven't really said it out loud in English yet.
yeah. So we did not see her this episode. So I imagine next week's episode will probably follow her to some extent.
Yeah. We need to at least further the actual plot of the show.
Yeah, for real. Well, that's gonna end our episode 4 review of the Halo TV series. Let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. As always, stay tuned right here to Pixel Street Videos for more podcasts, reviews, let's plays, and unboxings. We'll be back here next week with a review of episode 5.